Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Good morning, everyone. Rick Walker here at Maverick News. Welcome back, Maverick family, and to new viewers from around the world, wherever you are. It may not be morning. It may be even evening. And overnight, we did see the United States attack Venezuela. So we were on earlier, some technical problems, but we got some information out to people in our previous broadcast. Coming back on now to bring you up to date live with more live coverage of the U.S. attack on Venezuela overnight. President Trump posting on Truth Social that and confirming that Nicolas Maduro and Maduro's wife have been captured as a result of this military operation in Venezuela, and they are going to face some sort of legal action on U.S. soil. And bringing us up to date on that file is Attorney General Pam Bondi. This is just breaking, most up-to-date information coming from Pam Bondi, and you can find exactly what this is all about on her X account. She's just posted just minutes ago. Nicolas Maduro and his wife have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. Nicolas Maduro has been charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices against the United States. They will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil in American courts. On behalf of the entire U.S. DOJ, I would like to thank President Trump for having the courage to demand accountability on behalf of the American people, and a huge thank you to our brave military who conducted the incredible and highly successful mission to capture these two alleged international narco traffickers. So some responses here this morning, just moments ago, again, just minutes ago after Pam Bondi posting that. Let's just take a look at what responses we're getting on her X account. Magdalena T. Lavasi posting, that's not the issue. It's not up to the USA to determine what leader they have. It's up to their country to do something about it. The dude that is left behind is worse than Maduro. It's also not up to us. It's also not up to us to go into other countries and to take their resources. They did not attack us first. Jorge Rezati says, after 2 decades of communism and hunger, today could mark the end of the darkest period in our history. Goes on and says, the United States captured Venezuela's dictator Nicolas Maduro. The situation remains delicate and the upcoming days are crucial. After 2 decades of communism and hunger, today could mark the end of the darkest period in our history. Now, Trump on Truth Social did, shortly after the attack on Venezuela, posted this, both through the White House account and on his own Truth Social account, saying the United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow, and this is important, and we will be picking this up later this morning. He says there will be a news conference today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. So we will pick up that feed, and indeed, we have the link to it already established. So we'll be live at 11 a.m. Eastern when President Trump goes live with more information about this attack on Venezuela. And we've seen the military escalation in real time off the coast of Venezuela, the strikes on all those speedboats that Trump and Pete Hegseth and other members of the Trump administration have characterized as narco-terrorist boats. Close to 100 people in total at this point having been killed in these strikes against these boats. Now, an actual full-scale, large-scale, this was not anything small. This was a large-scale military attack against Venezuela overnight. We do actually have some footage that we can share with you this morning. This being reposted by Melanie Stansbury, who is saying the White House is confirming U.S. military operations in Venezuela. And she says, let us be clear, these strikes are illegal. The president does not have the authority to declare war on our undertake large-scale military operations without Congress. Congress must act to rein him in immediately. And so she is posting or reposting this footage showing one of the areas of attack overnight. Here's the footage. Yes, we have seen several videos emerge of attack helicopters, apparently over the capital city of Venezuela. And as part of the initial attack, Maduro captured along with Maduro's wife, taken into custody by U.S. forces. Trump saying that it wasn't just the military involved. He says U.S. law enforcement also.
Son las 1:58 de la mañana.
Although what authority the United States actually has on Venezuelan territory up for dispute. Does the United States really have the authority to go into what is seen as a sovereign country internationally and exert this kind of authority and coercion? And yet tonight, well, this morning now, the EU, representatives from the EU posting online, making a statement saying that they have not recognized Venezuela. They've seen and have said that Nicolas Maduro's government was illegitimate, and now obviously Maduro not there. So what's going to happen now? Well, we're not entirely sure. The opposition saying that the arrest, if you want to call it that, or the capture, I think is probably a more accurate term, of Maduro was some sort of a negotiated thing. So that's an interesting development this morning as well. So we're trying to keep tabs on that. Just going over here to take a look in at our Rumble channels to make sure everything is running okay this morning. We had a little bit of trouble with our first feed. Here we go. Yeah, everything seems to be firing on all cylinders, so that is good this morning. And so we are live across the Maverick News Network, bringing you this live coverage of the U.S. attack on Venezuela overnight. And here is some footage overnight. This from the live streams, the multi-stream footage that we picked up earlier, which showed not just some of the actual physical kinetic attacks on the capital and areas of Venezuela, but also military vehicles on the streets. And as you can see, some sort of vehicle surrounded there, somebody getting out. I don't know exactly what was going on here, but we know that there was some chaos as a result of this. Somehow the Venezuelan defense minister survived the initial U.S. attack and also went online to issue a statement condemning the U.S. attack. Not clear what the state of the Venezuelan military is at this point. I'm going to bring you some of the address from the U.S. or the Venezuelan defense minister who survived the attack, as I say, and then went to social media to post, and I think conventional media in Venezuela or legacy media, television, to post a video condemning the U.S. attack. Okay, let's bring it up over here. This is in Spanish, so I won't the whole thing run because we are an English language station. Nevertheless, for balance, fairness, accuracy, and to show you the authenticity of what we're talking about, I gave you this. And this is what's available online.
Buenos días, pueblo heroico de Venezuela, soldados y soldadas de la patria, hijos e hijas de Bolívar. La Fuerza Armada Nacional Bolivariana informa al mundo entero que en la madrugada de hoy, 3 de enero, el pueblo venezolano ha sido objeto de la más criminal agresión militar por parte del gobierno de los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica. Hasta el momento, la barbarie de las fuerzas invasoras que han profanado nuestro suelo sagrado en las localidades de Fuerte Tiuna, Caracas, los estados Miranda, Aragua y La Guaira, llegando a impactar con sus misiles y cohetes disparados desde sus helicópteros.
I'll just bring this down. So what he is saying is the Venezuelan, this is his words translated, the Venezuelan people have been subjected to the most criminal military aggression by the government of the United States. He goes on and says they have desecrated our sacred soil in Caracas and the states of Miranda, Aragua, and La Guaira. And he says, we issue the strongest denunciation before the international community for the flagrant violation of the United Nations Charter and international law. Some concerned about the impact this might have on Latin America, and I think even around the world, but certainly in Latin America, we've seen the president of Colombia is setting up, or has set up some sort of a base of operations on the Venezuelan border, and has posted a list of sites within Venezuela that have been attacked, and he is also calling for an emergency session of the United Nations to respond to this. Now, President Trump, of course, saying the United States has captured Venezuelan President Maduro, says they have flown them out of the country after these large-scale strikes. And the Venezuelan government accusing the U.S. of attacking civilian and military installations in multiple states, rejecting the U.S. military operation here as military aggression by Washington. Before being captured, Maduro declared a national emergency when the attacks began. Now, the U.S. does have actually a long history of interventions in Latin America. Guatemala in 1954, there was a CIA-backed coup that overthrew the president there. Cuba in 1959-61. After Fidel Castro came to power, the U.S. sought to remove him. All of that, of course, culminating in the failed Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961, also CIA-backed. Brazil in 1964, the Dominican Republic in 65, U.S. troops invaded to prevent the return of the leftist president at that time. And this operation, attack in Venezuela overnight and ongoing this morning, I think it's probably proper and accurate to frame it as part of the escalating global war against liberalism coming from the neo-Eurasianists and the populists and the America Firsters and the MAGA types and the MAGA supporters. But of course, even within the United States, you're getting political divide on this, the divisions deepening, as you just saw from one of President Trump's political opponents saying that what's happening in Venezuela right now is illegal and that Congress needs to get involved. The U.S. also involved in a U.S.-backed anti-communist effort in 1961 to 63 in Ecuador, Bolivia, Uruguay, Chile, Argentina in 1976, El Salvador in the 80s, and Nicaragua. And then there was Grenada in 1983. That's when Reagan was in power. The U.S. invaded after internal unrest, and they were citing concerns over Marxist governance and Cuban influence, and they replaced the government with a U.S.-aligned administration at the time. And then in 89, there was Panama. U.S. forces invaded Panama to remove military ruler Noriega, ending his dictatorship and reasserting U.S. influence over the Panama Canal at that time. And isn't it interesting to see that that was one of the first things Trump went after when he came back into power for Trump 2.0, focused on Panama, saying the U.S. wants it back. And the administration focused heavily on that right off the top. And indeed, they have reasserted U.S. control of the Panama Canal, if not through military efforts, certainly through business efforts. So Maduro and his wife have been indicted to face charges in New York. This coming from U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, saying that Maduro and his wife will face charges. And I'm sure that we will get more about that at 11 a.m. Eastern this morning, when President Trump will appear for a news conference at Mar-a-Lago. Now, it's not really clear where this is going to go from here. It may be positive, it may not be. It really depends on what comes after. And as we've seen through history, when the United States, or any country really for that matter, but certainly the U.S., when they become involved or undertake regime change in a country, sometimes what comes after is even worse. And Venezuela has been under extreme economic pressure in past years, with Maduro coming to power after Chavez, the death of Chavez. And many, countries around the world, when he came to power, when they're not recognizing his election as legitimate, saying that the election was fraudulent. So even tonight, out of the European Union, you're seeing statements sort of distancing themselves from this U.S. military intervention, operation, war, invasion, attack, whatever word you want to use. The EU is saying that they don't, at least some of the EU officials this morning have already publicly stated they do not recognize the Maduro regime. So you're not going to see any pushback, I don't think, from the EU against what Trump is doing here. Yeah, not only maybe they really mean it, but given the current state of relations between the United States and EU countries and what's going on with the United States and NATO, I don't think you're going to see too much pushback, because the relations are already strained considerably to begin with. So that situation is very delicate. And I don't know where Canada will end up on all of this either. I think that probably, and I'm just speculating, predicting, which is dangerous, but I don't, and I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm not going to put words into Mark Carney's mouth or the words of the Foreign Affairs Minister, but I expect on the Canadian side, they'll come up with something sort of fluffy and light and neutral, and say something like, we're monitoring the situation, we're very concerned, and we're speaking with U.S. administration officials and maybe even directly with President Trump, and sort of leave it at that. They won't condemn it. They won't support it. I think they'll just come out with a half-baked, half-hearted, half statement without going one way or the other, because Canada's in a very delicate situation here. And as we pointed out, for a long time, well, really since the U.S. military buildup off the coast of Venezuela, we've shown that the very justifications that the Trump administration has ginned up, drummed up, created, manufactured to justify what they're doing right now, the narco-terrorism charges in particular, it's the same arguments, the same reasoning that they're applying to Canada to apply pressure on the Canadian government. The liberal socialist even viewed by many on the Trump MAGA side as a communist dictatorship in Canada. You're hearing the same kind of rhetoric directed toward Canada as Trump talks about making Canada the 51st state. So this thing going on right now in Venezuela is going to make Canadian officials very, very nervous. Make no mistake about that. Even I'm worried about it. I can't believe I'm saying that. I never thought I'd ever see the day where I would actually be worried that the United States government might take some sort of crazy action against Canada, a long-time reliable ally. And not as reliable now, I don't think, but not because of the Canadian position, but because of the Trump position on Canada and the way that he views the Western Hemisphere and the Americas, which is to say that under this new multipolar geopolitical reality that we find ourselves in, that is now being emerged, created, forged by, the superpowers, as it were, in the world today. Trump just views the Americas as being under his control, and these countries in North America, South America, Central America, in the Americas, they're just supposed to fall into line and do whatever Trump says. It's sort of a new version of the Monroe Doctrine in the view of many. But certainly it is the evolution of and the emergence of this new geopolitical ideology. Some call it neo-Eurasianism. On the American side, it's called, basically America First. It's all part of the MAGA thing, the populist movement. It's a new form of right-wing politics, which converges multiple political ideologies. And you're seeing the same ideology play out certainly strongly in Russia as they, through Duginism and neo-Eurasianism, view the world as something that needs to be carved up into spheres of political dominance. And the United States dominating in North America. Now, all that being said, of course, what's going on in Venezuela right now, we've seen the Kremlin, we've seen the Russian government come out and, sort of issue a wishy-washy statement on this. They're not happy about it, Venezuela being a Russian ally and also an ally of Iran. Iran sending weapons just recently to Venezuela to provide some sort of technology and military hardware that Venezuela was supposed to use to defend itself. But the force being brought to bear here by the United States so overwhelming, this thing was pretty much over before it started. And the United States waltzed in there overnight in darkness, except for a full moon, light of a full moon. And that surprised some military analysts who say that the United States generally likes to do these kinds of things under complete darkness or as much darkness as possible. So a little bit of a surprise there to see them do it with a full moon. But with the amount of firepower that they amassed off the coast of Venezuela, the operation was decisive. And Maduro being captured shortly after U.S. forces went in, along with his wife. So let's go over and take a look at the feed on RT to get a sense of what's going on internationally. See what the reaction is over there. So Russia's just headlining here on RT. Maduro charged in U.S. with narco-terrorism conspiracy. Maduro indicted in New York U.S. Attorney General. charges include narcotics trafficking and weapons possession. And Bondi, so they're getting this stuff quickly. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife have been indicted in New York on several charges related to drug trafficking and weapons possession, U.S. Attorney General Pamela Bondi has said. The two had been captured by the U.S. military in Caracas, Venezuela, just hours before in an early morning raid. So how far is this thing going to go? Not sure. Does this signal the beginning of something that will last longer because there will be some sort of ongoing military resistance on the Venezuelan side? Doesn't appear that there's much resistance coming forth at the moment. But again, very hard to say. A lot of chaos still on the ground there. And we'll get more information as the morning brings forth more details. We're going to show you, go back to this live stream again here. This is actually not live. This is older footage from earlier this morning at overnight. You can see the fires raging in the distance there from the U.S. attack on whatever that was in the distance. So this is a multi-stream account providing a feed right out of Venezuela. But this footage overnight. So, I don't know, justification for it, narco-terrorism. And Trump actually saying the quiet part right out loud, not even hiding it, saying, that the other reason, and I think the real reason, is because of the way U.S. oil companies were in Venezuela and then had to leave when the oil industry was nationalized. And Trump says they want their property, their property back, their oil back, and then imposing these sanctions on Venezuelan oil, pursuing the Venezuelan oil tankers, and seizing not just the oil but the ships themselves. So as this thing has evolved, it has escalated that way. And as I've been saying, the true motivation here, and I think most serious analysts agree, that it's all about the oil and the resources. And Nicolas Maduro has been a longtime critic of the U.S. administration, accusing them all along of wanting to steal Venezuela's resources, those being things like oil, precious minerals, gold. And with those resources at hand, Venezuela should be one of the wealthiest countries on the face of Earth because it has the largest oil reserves in the world compared to any other country. Much larger than even what is available in Alberta. But Trump is very much focused on all of the oil-rich countries within his sphere of influence, and even in the Middle East, of course. And that's something that should clue you in, because when you look at the way that Trump has been interacting in an aggressive manner with different countries, the countries he's been most aggressive with are oil-rich countries. He wants all the oil. A lot of reasons for that, not the least of which is that they going to need a lot of energy to power all these artificial intelligence incubators, AI facilities that they're planning on building all over the place. And just before, just weeks before this action overnight by the U.S. military, Maduro had been talking about making Venezuela an AI superpower because, of course, they have all the oil and they have the energy that would have had it to run these AI development facilities. And you're looking at even Canada, looking at building AI facilities in places like Alberta, oil rich. So data centers, right? So much going on. Like it's complicated and yet so simple when you really just stand back and take an aerial view of the whole thing. So this morning, this thing continues to evolve. Maduro, I guess, yanked back to the United States, or yanked into the United States. They're not, isn't it interesting that this guy, they go to Venezuela to arrest him. So they went to another country to arrest somebody, to bring them to the United States while they're deporting all these other people, saying, you have to get out of here. And they've been trying to push people back to Venezuela, which has had, um, has been the source of a big surge in migration because the economy there has been so bad. And why has the economy been so bad? Well, if you talk to, the Trump supporters on the US side, they'll say it's because Maduro was a communist dictator and the communist economic policies don't work. But it isn't just that. And I've stated here that I'm no fan of communism, and I'm certainly no fan of Nicolas Maduro, who many believe was not legitimately elected. I'm not saying one way or the other. I have no freaking idea. But I also know that it's not just because of his economic policies. It's also because of sanctions and the way that the United States has applied pressure on Venezuela to isolate the country and prevent Venezuela from effectively trading. Sanctions. And that's what they've been doing with the oil just of late. Sanctioning the oil, seizing the oil at sea, the United States being accused of piracy for having done it, and even confiscating the boats. And in a news conference, asked, what are you going to do with the oil? And says, I'm going to keep it. How does he justify it? He says it's because U.S. oil companies used to be in Venezuela, and then they had to leave and they weren't properly compensated. And there was legal action internationally over that dispute. And yes, it is true that Venezuela has not paid all of the settlement money that was awarded through these international legal interventions to the oil companies. So is there justification there? I don't know. I mean, the oil, the resources ultimately, I guess, do or should belong to the country if it's a sovereign nation. But if you make a deal with an international company to say, come in here, you're always at the mercy ultimately of the government of the day. Can you trust them? Can you trust the deals that they make? And Trump being the deal maker, I think a lot of people don't trust the United States now because of the way he's behaved. And again, I never thought I'd hear myself saying that either about the United States, or certainly even about Trump, but that is exactly what we have. We have a president in office who is not trusted by even the closest of traditional allies. And what's going on in Venezuela right now is going to rattle that even more. This is an assertion of coercive power by the U.S. under Trump. Legal or not, he doesn't really care. And that's why I'm going to pivot back to what he did with the Gulf of Mexico, just renaming it. That was a first shot across the bow, a big statement, actually, because he is rolling out this new policy under the Trump regime, Trump administration, of dominance within the Americas, within the Western Hemisphere. As the world is carved up into spheres of dominance, Russia, China, USA. So he renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America with the stroke of a pen, didn't consult with anybody, didn't care, just decided to do it. And a lot of people still laughed, and they didn't take it terribly seriously. And I said, no, it's very serious, because it reshapes the way people perceive the Gulf, who actually owns it, who controls it. And it shapes the perception that people have in terms of how much authority does the president of the United States, and more specifically, how much power, authority does Donald Trump have And if he can get you to start to say Gulf of America instead of Gulf of Mexico, as many, many people have, this, starting to do that, and most in America did it almost instantly, then you're acknowledging that he has the power to do that he can do whatever he wants, even internationally. So it was an important moment, and now it's playing out in terms of this as well. When he says that he wants to take over Greenland, he's not joking. When he said that he wants to make Canada the 51st state, and people laughed and said he's joking, no, he's not joking. It's a very real thing. And here we go in Venezuela. And whether he actually goes in and, takes over the country, what he's doing here is he is looking to put a Trump puppet into power in Venezuela. And if you toe the line and you do what Trump says, you'll be okay. But if you don't, and if you engage in liberal socialist type policies, you're at risk, because he's at war with liberalism, socialism, communism. And as far as he is concerned, it's all fair game. Get rid of the commies and install sympathetic rulers within the Americas to essentially make them all governors, treating them all as vassal states or states, period, of the Americas, of the United States. And that's what's going on. And this doesn't bode well, in my view, and I'm editorializing here a bit. It doesn't bode well for Ukraine, because what's going on now is, even though Venezuela is an ally of Russia and Iran, those countries won't really do anything because of, in the case of Russia, because of Ukraine. They won't do anything to push back too hard against what Trump is doing here with Venezuela, because that's within Trump's sphere of influence or dominance. And Trump, as you've seen, has been softening the position of the U.S. over time, becoming softer and softer in many respects with regard to Ukraine, because as far as he is concerned, it's not his responsibility. That's right on Putin's doorstep in his backyard. Let Putin deal with it, and don't get too involved when Putin invades a sovereign country, Ukraine. And so that's the deal. You stay out of my backyard, I'll stay out of yours. And that's what we're dealing with. And that's what Ukraine is going to have to deal with. And some legal analysts out there tonight, this morning, saying that this is really potentially the end of international law, certainly under the concept of the rules-based international order. So again, 11 a.m., Trump's going to hold a presser at Mar-a-Lago, his private estate, saying that he, or at least U.S. forces, have captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. Venezuela coming out and saying that, the vice president, they're saying they do not know the whereabouts of Maduro. I think I know who might have them. And the vice president of Venezuela demanding proof from the United States now. Proof of life. They want to know if Maduro and his wife are actually still alive. Now, the EU has come right out, as I said, the European Union's foreign policy chief, Kaji Kallas, saying that the bloc is closely monitoring the situation in Venezuela and is calling for restraint. And in the statement earlier today, Kallas has said that she spoke with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the EU's ambassador in Caracas. And this is what she said. It was said that the EU has repeatedly stated that Mr. Maduro lacks legitimacy and has defended a peaceful transition. The quote continues, under all circumstances, the principles of international law and the UN Charter must be respected. Going on to say that the safety of EU citizens in Venezuela is the bloc's top priority. Cuba has denounced this attack as a criminal U.S. form of state terrorism against the Venezuelan people. Cuba's presidency said the zone of peace is being brutally assaulted, and it demanded a reaction from the international community to the, quote, criminal U.S. attack on Venezuela. And you're seeing these accusations of this being a criminal attack even coming from some U.S. politicians who are in opposition to Trump, pointing out that really he should have congressional approval before doing anything like this. Where does the public come down on this in terms of support? Not exactly clear. I don't think we really have too much recent polling on it. I wouldn't think that this will go over very well with the American people, though, if this lingers in any way and becomes, a larger ongoing conflict, war even, right within Venezuela. Now, this may well be over very, very shortly. The U.S. going in with overwhelming force, obviously, within a short period of time, overnight, capturing Maduro, essentially cutting off the head of the snake, going after the president, capturing him. You've captured the king, if you want to look at it in chess terms. So what does that mean? Is this all over? I think that we have a military on the Venezuelan side and a faltering administration, their government that caught, even though they knew this was coming, they were still caught flat-footed, and you've got a bit of a pause going on here, I think. And the question is, will the pause result in some sort of retaliatory action on the Venezuelan side in the hours, maybe days, or even weeks ahead? I don't know. Or is this going to translate into some sort of regime change quickly, where the U.S. maintains control and provides some sort of military intervention to ensure stability on the streets and through society? What kind of transition are we going to see in terms of governance in Venezuela? Quite often when these things happen, you end up with something a lot worse than what you had originally. So what's going to come after Maduro? It might be worse. Could be better. Don't know. Some people are already talking about election of some kind to be held. Will it matter? How legitimate is an election when the government on the way out the door was unceremoniously evicted, captured, taken to another country to be put on trial? Is that even justified? Is that legal? I guess it depends on how you look at it. Is this really an issue about drugs? Hard to say. Or maybe not. It depends on how you view the Maduro government, such as it was. It's not there anymore because he's gone. The question there too is, how do you view it? Is it a legitimate government or an illegitimate government? If you think it's an illegitimate government because the elections were fraudulent, or you see him as a dictator, and therefore you use that as justification for invading or whatever, I think the U.S. would be in a much stronger position had they gone to other countries in the area, other stakeholders, geopolitically, internationally, and they said that this is our objective. We want to affect regime change within Venezuela because of all these things and the negative impacts they're having on the population, on the people of Venezuela. But Trump didn't do that. He hasn't done that at all. He's acted unilaterally here. And it reminds me of what George Bush said, with regard to Iraq. Said, we don't really need anyone's permission. I suppose that's true because they have so much firepower, so much technological advantage. The United States can pretty much do whatever it wants. And will you see pushback? From even allied countries? Minimal, I would expect. because you're dealing with Godzilla, and who wants to piss off Godzilla, especially when Godzilla is already engaging in trade wars with countries that have been longtime traditional allies and friends of the United States, picking fights with those countries, talking about making Canada the 51st state. So how will the Canadian government respond to this state today? What will the foreign affairs minister say? What will Mark Carney say? My guess is I think he'll just come out with some sort of a neutral statement, not really fully condemning it, but not endorsing it. I don't think the Canadian government will do that. I think that you'll see them come out and say something. We're monitoring the situation. We have concerns about what's going on down there. We're worried about the people. We love the people of Venezuela or something, and we're calling for a restraint and peace. Something to that effect. All that happening, I think, because you're going to see, like with Canada, there's just ongoing concerns about what's the United States going to do to us. And so if you're Mark Carney, you're the prime minister, and you're looking at what's going on in Venezuela right now, you're taking note. And for the first time in my lifetime, there's real genuine concern up here that Canada might be targeted by the United States using the same arguments, the same justification, the same manufactured consent that he has used to do this in Venezuela. You're seeing the same arguments applied to Canada. And I don't think that it's justified at all to take things to that extreme. Will Canada be targeted in that way? I hope not. It's totally unnecessary. We're already friends of the United States, but Trump wants to control things. He wants access to the resources. He wants access to the money. He wants to give, even in Canada, access to Alberta oil to big U.S. oil companies. Make no mistake of that. That's really at the heart of all of this. And as I said some time ago, if you look at the way the Trump administration has been treating oil-rich countries, it's been very aggressive, because the objective here is to take over the resources, not just the oil. But we've seen even Maduro say that the real true objective of the United States in this case is to take control of the oil, the resources, the gold. Oh, it's the golden era, the new golden age under Trump for sure. For sure. Where things seem to be calming down just a little bit after a rough night, to say the least. So the U.S. attack overnight in the darkness with just a full moon. We saw attack helicopters over the capital of Venezuela. Footage emerging of that. The scene this morning, though, at this 8:19 a.m. Eastern Time. Daylight. And it's all quiet on the Venezuelan front at the moment, at least here, looking at this. But this is not over yet. There's a lot more to come. What will the U.S. do at this point now? You think you have a government in waiting of sorts with the Venezuelan opposition sitting there, but some people talking about, potentially elections or something being held in the wake of all of this. Okay, let me take a little break. We're going to come back. Live coverage of the U.S. attack on Venezuela will continue after this.
Greetings, brave mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, we're going to go to this X Spaces with Mario and Awful. They have people reacting over there. We've been bringing you reaction to this morning internationally.
Say one
This has
last
been
thing.
going on for a while.
Everybody who's listening here right now, who are participating in this discussion, you are doing precisely what hundreds of intelligence watch offices, diplomatic offices are doing. Don't feel bad about having these, 3 a.m. hash smoking conversations about what could come based on what little information we have. Even with all of the top secret SCI information in the world, we're all going to be doing this. So I think this discussion is very helpful.
Let me go to Aladdin, then Zulu, and then Brian. Aladdin.
Yeah, I agree with Malcolm because me and him, we are on the same field, and we used to have these discussions all the time when something big happens. But let's walk back to the memory line. Like these dictators, they really think they are invincible. And what happened with Saddam Hussein? Saddam Hussein, 1991, almost got overthrown, and they got a deal with him, and he stayed in power during Desert Storm. It actually emboldened him even more, and he thought he's going to stay in power until he's dead. And when 2003 rolled in, and they were like, "Hey, get out, save your ass," he thought, "No, I'm staying in because the people are going to fight with me." And guess what? In 3 weeks, the entire country fell, and that was like a full-scale invasion. These dictators, they really think they are invincible and they cannot be touched. So I would not be surprised if Maduro was in the same mindset of, like, let's say Saddam Hussein. And guess what? They're all paper tigers. Like these military was like Saddam Hussein at the time. It was like the 5th largest army, and everybody was bragging. It was like 56 countries invaded Iraq. It was like it was a joke. The entire thing was a joke. Like the only thing that U.S. actually did some real fighting, especially in 2003, it was in Bayab, the Baghdad airport. That's like the only opposition force they actually faced. The entire country they rolled through without any or little resistance. And in this particular case with Maduro, we did a surgical operation. It's similar to hostage rescue, but it's basically this is a target capture. And these people are trained. There's a reason why these surgical attacks happened right before they rolled in with their helicopters. I'm pretty sure they're probably rappelled in, got out real quick. And that's why you saw there's a video circulating early this morning when I woke up, and there's a couple Chinooks, a few Apaches, and a few Blackhawks. And obviously, when you rappel from a Blackhawk extraction, goes back to the Chinook. And yeah, there's a method to this entire chaos. And we got to learn more about it. and but I bet you they repelled in from Blackhawks when they got extracted. They got extracted from with Chinooks, and they went about their way. But yeah, this is a masterful operation. Whether there's people involved in it, I'm pretty sure a lot of people involved in these kind of things, especially not taking any type of casualty. But uh, props to the Air Force, whatever, whomever got involved, doing a surgical operation like that, striking down the effective, I guess, in range Venezuelan military assets or air defense to actually get our boys in and out as quickly as possible and safely as possible, and accomplish this mission. And but yeah, my main point: dictators actually they all think the same. They are invincible, and they cannot be taken down. It's their arrogance, and
No,
history
Aladdin, I
keeps.
would agree with you. I mean, Maduro had extreme levels of arrogance when this was really kicking off. And I think he probably looked at this from a 2019 perspective and didn't see the writing on the wall and tried to see that, maybe no new wars, et cetera. And that's kind of the situation we got. But I would agree that there was a lot of sense of arrogance in how Maduro was operating. But Zulu, and then we'll go to Brian, and then we'll go to Stouts. Go ahead, Zulu.
The interesting thing is the Venezuelan people, right? Is that Venezuelans are not, and even the Venezuelan regime is not a country that has been fighting wars for the last 20, 25, 30, 50 years, right? Like you see in these dictatorial autocrats, countries around the world. It's not Afghanistan where there's this a religious fervor that doesn't exist in Venezuela. It's not Iraq where the Iraqis were combative force, right? They at least they'd gone through the Iran-Iraq war. At least they had, fought the Kurds. Like they at least had some structure of semblance of some organization. The Venezuelans do not have that. Venezuela is not necessarily historically a conflictive country that has been fighting for decades and decades on this side. It's been mainly G2 Cuban influence type, doing some paramilitary. These guys are bands of the colectivos are literally criminals they're malandros that we're taking from the streets and then giving a bit of an organization to be able to do that. It's not like the country's flooded with AK-47s and RPGs that can mount formidable defense on some guerrilla warfare tactics. And the colectivos, as long as they can conduct criminality, that's the thing that they're going to continue to do because it doesn't necessarily have a north as an organization. So I think the thing that we're going to see quickly is this crumbling and getting very disorganized very quickly. And there's the religious impetus behind it, and that there's not a religious fervor behind it. There's not an ideology behind this thing. These guys were all socialists of the 21st century, drinking 21-year-old scotch and living on their boats in Puerto La Cruz, going to lavish parties and having a good time. And as soon as they smell the first sights of danger, they're going to get out of there as quick as possible.
Okay, so there's one take on it, and that is something that I think we're seeing a theme develop there in that X Spaces commonality in comments where the people involved there are thinking that this isn't going to escalate or linger, and in terms of conflict, it's something that's basically maybe even already over. A quick strike, go in, you chop off the head of the snake, you capture the king, you take Maduro out, you get your regime change, you're in, you're out, and that's it. Maybe, maybe not. What are the implications going to be for Trump on this over the long term? If this is indeed something that is already over or won't last much beyond a few days, it probably won't hurt him. It might even help him with his base because they'll spin this as a giant success, a great achievement by Trump to go in. He's still the president of peace because he went in and was so effective and so assertive and used so much force and used so much strength. He's actually keeping the peace in in Latin America. But if it goes on any amount of time, and if you see any casualties on the U.S. side, it will hurt him. And some people will still be critical of what he's doing down there, accusing him of violating the sovereignty of another nation state. But all of that kind of thinking, I think, has gone right out the window anyway. Not just internationally, but even on the domestic front, where Trump, I guess, has finally informed Congress of what's happened in Venezuela, but after the fact, notifying congressional leadership about the Venezuelan operation, telling them about the capture of Maduro, but not until it was actually already done. How is he justifying this? Article 2 of the Constitution, which makes the president commander-in-chief of the military. So Secretary of State Rubio did tell Senator Mike Lee that this action in Venezuela was legal under Article 2 because it protected U.S. personnel executing Maduro's arrest warrant. Now, this does break with tradition because usually Congress, congressional leaders typically notified before these kinds of military operations. So also Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, saying that these strikes in Venezuela would require congressional approval, but that's not what we got. Congress did not get notification beforehand, but they know now. But then so did we. We learned about it overnight. And after it began, we came on, we did do a live stream, got some information out. We came back on now live about 1 hour ago. It is now 8:32 a.m. Eastern time. This story continues to evolve. So the legal argument is about protecting arrest warrant executors, not seeking regime change, but indeed the objective here clearly is regime change and acquisition of resources, minerals, oil out of Venezuela. So we'll see if that all holds up over time. We've seen the EU just say, well, you know, we don't really think that the Maduro government was legitimate to begin with, so you're not getting much pushback there. And out of the UK, we've seen Prime Minister Starmer saying Britain was not involved in this U.S. military operation overnight that saw Maduro captured, removed from power. He's calling for calm, for fact-finding. He says Britain is focusing on protecting 500 British nationals who are still inside Venezuela. Now, I don't think Starmer has spoken to Trump at this point, but he says this morning that he will be speaking to President Trump, presumably through the day sometime. I have a clip of Keir Starmer. Let's cue it up. We'll share that with you now. So the statements will come fast and furious this morning, but I think that you will find that the words will be chosen very, very carefully. You don't want to piss off Godzilla.
Have you spoken to Donald Trump about what's happened in Venezuela?
No, I haven't, and it's obviously a fast-moving situation, and we need to establish all the facts. What I can say is that the UK was not involved in any way in this operation. And as you'd expect, we're focusing on British nationals in Venezuela and working very closely with our embassy. And so I will want to talk to the president, I will want to talk to allies, but at the moment, I think we need to establish the facts. I think President Trump is doing a press conference later, so hopefully more information will come out then.
What is clear, though, which the White House has said, is that America carried out strikes on Venezuela and captured their leader, Maduro. Some politicians in this country have already condemned that. Do you?
Well, I want to establish the facts first. I want to speak to President Trump. I want to speak to allies. As I say, I can be absolutely clear that we were not involved in that. And as you know, I always say and believe we should all uphold international law. But I think at this stage, fast-moving situation, let's establish the facts and take it from there.
And just lastly, for people who might have family there or the small number of Brits in Venezuela, there are some there, it might be a small number, but of course people will be very concerned. What would their advice be?
Yeah, there's about 500 there in Venezuela, and we're working with the embassy to make sure that they are well looked after, safeguarded, and get appropriate advice. So we're working at pace with the embassy on that. It is a small number, but it's an important number. It is about 500, and so that's what we're doing there.
Okay, that from Sky News. We'll be right back.
Greetings, brave mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so that's kind of where we stand this morning. 8:38 a.m. now, Eastern Time. So we've come on overnight to share this information about the U.S. attack on Venezuela. Just go back to the Truth Social scroll here briefly, just to check for an update, share with you the most recent information. And still, this is where President Trump is at with all of this morning. The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, he says, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow. And then we've seen that Pam Bondi, Attorney General, coming out and saying Maduro is being indicted in the Southern District of New York, talking about weapons possession of machine guns, weapons to be used against the United States, charges related to all of that, plus narco-terrorism, both Maduro and his wife. Okay. All right, one more break, and we'll come back. We'll get you the most up-to-date information. Be right back.
Brightleaf Innovations is excited to offer our newest investment opportunity, the Turn Easy Bed Storage Solution.
Turns with a touch, spins all the way around. Every little thing you need is easy to be found. No more clutter, no more mess on the floor. Just spin it, reach it, you don't search anymore. Turn Easy Bed, spin your world around. Storage made simple, the best you found. Shelves your way, keep the mess away. Charge it, store it, night or day. Custom shelves for your books or your tech. Cozy space for your treasures to protect. Built-in power when you need to recharge. Smart design that makes your bedroom feel large. Turn Easy Bed, spin your world around. Storage made simple, the best you found. Shelves your way, keep the mess away. Charge it, store it, night or day. Designed and developed by Brightleaf Innovations. Proudly Canadian and patent pending in North America. Turn Easy Bed transforms how you live.
To learn more about this innovative new product idea and exciting investment opportunity, call 519-784-0222 or visit brightleafinnovations.com.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. On TV, the entire world is watching. On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
Okay, we're back. So just to bring you up to date on where we're at, the U.S. did attack Venezuela overnight with a large-scale strike. This happening early Saturday. We became aware of it here overnight, awakened from a slumber, but not as dramatically as the people in Venezuela who were subjected to explosions, missile attacks, attack helicopters over the capital. And shortly after all of that began, Venezuela's president, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife captured by the U.S. military. President Trump saying U.S. law enforcement also involved in the operation. Maduro now in the custody of U.S. authorities, taken to the United States, where Attorney General Pam Bondi says they will face, Maduro and his wife, both of them, will face charges in the Southern District of New York on charges of narco-terrorism, drug trafficking, and possession of weapons like machine guns, which they say were going to be used or were possessed because they wanted to use them against the United States. So whether there's legal authority for this strike, that's not exactly clear. We know that Trump did not inform Congress beforehand, informing them after the fact. And this was a lightning fast action, no question about it. Overwhelming force used, brought to bear here. Huge buildup, as we've seen, of the U.S. military off the Venezuelan coast over many weeks. And we've known for some time that some sort of military intervention and an attack was imminent. And finally, overnight, we got exactly that. That's what happened. Now, Maduro was indicted in 2020 on narco-terrorism conspiracy charges, but now, not exactly sure how his wife fits into all of this. Both of them, we're told, will be going to court on U.S. soil in an American court. Now, a lot of explosions, many explosions rang out overnight. Low-flying aircraft went through the Venezuelan capital. We had footage of attack helicopters, which we showed you here on the program earlier, and Maduro's government is accusing the U.S. of attacking both military and civilian targets. The Venezuelan government, even now, is calling it an imperialist attack. The defense minister issuing a statement online after surviving the attack, and I believe the residence of the defense minister was also attacked. And it is interesting to see that the U.S. goes in, arrests or captures, kidnaps maybe, depending on your point of view, the president of Venezuela, and they launched some sort of attack even on the residence of the defense minister while criticizing Zelensky for an alleged drone attack targeting Putin, which some are just saying that it was an outright fake thing, propaganda from Putin and Russia to create leverage and a new position from which Russia could launch some sort of a retaliatory attack against Zelensky. Not to conflate the two, but we are seeing the geopolitical situation, the dots between different situations connect here even this morning, because we're seeing some in the Trump camp saying that the larger justification beyond the drug issue for what the United States is doing here is geopolitical, because they're saying that Venezuela is an ally of Iran and China and Russia, and therefore the actions taken overnight are justified because it's in the U.S. interest, because Venezuela poses a larger threat to the United States than you might think, because of their affiliation, their alliance with these other adversaries of the U.S. So they're invading Venezuela to protect the United States from Hezbollah, from Iran, from China, from Russia. Now, the vice president of Venezuela saying they don't know where the president of Venezuela is, where Maduro is, even as the Trump administration makes this announcement, as the Trump himself says that Maduro has been captured. The Venezuelan government now is saying they want proof of life. They want to make sure that he's still alive. And if they have Maduro, they basically are saying, show him to us so that we know that he's alive and that you actually have him then, because we haven't seen him make a public appearance. So, they're looking for some sort of, I guess, a court arraignment or some sort of public appearance where the prisoner is brought forth to have the charges against him, and in the case of his wife, her, read aloud so they know exactly why they've been captured, detained, dragged off to a foreign country where they're going to now have to stand trial. Vice President Venezuela's tonight saying, "We do not know the whereabouts of President Nicolas Maduro and First Lady. We demand proof of life." So Trump's saying that they've been captured, flown out of the country. That's what he's saying. Venezuela wants to see, to find out if they're actually still alive. So now we've seen also on the U.S. side some people who fled Venezuela celebrating in the streets of places in Florida and other areas where you have Venezuelan communities. And within Venezuela, you're seeing different kinds of protests, demonstrations, some of them even in support of Maduro. Some have taken to the streets holding posters of Maduro up, and they're marching, denouncing the U.S. So this is not that simple. And if it is about oil, if it is about resources, I'm not sure where U.S. companies, corporations, oil companies will even end up after all of this, because they won't want to reinvest in Venezuela unless they see some stability there. And this right now is a developing situation. So it's not clear if order will be maintained or restored, or whether we're going to get more pushback in very early stages of the evolution of this invasion, attack, however you want to characterize it. Coming up at almost 9 a.m. here now, Eastern time. So we are about 2 hours away from President Trump going live from Mar-a-Lago with his press conference this morning to update us all, update the United States, U.S. citizens, the world, on what the United States has done overnight. Condemned by some, celebrated by others. And it's interesting to see how Trump's base of support is reacting to this morning. In fact, let's go back over to Truth Social, and we'll just do another quick Truth Social scroll, because I want to show you how Trump's base is responding. Because, of course, Trump campaigned on the idea of him being a peace president, of not getting the United States into any more wars, and certainly no more forever wars. Not clear where this is going yet. It looks like I'm getting the sense that, this is probably ending very, very soon. So this is Trump's account here. I'm just going to bring it up. Here's the Truth Social scroll. And so a lot of these people who say that they are opposed to wars like in Ukraine or even the Middle East, it's interesting to me because you're seeing some of them applauding this whole thing. Socialism sucks. There's the post here. Real Donald Trump, thank you. This is the Socialism Sucks account on Truth. Here we go, it says, about liberating Venezuela. Yeah. Venezuela for Trump. No posts. Somebody doesn't like Zoran Memdani. I've seen other people on True Social this morning posting things like the memes and the posters and the graphics saying, this is what we voted for. I didn't think that they were voting for military action, for invasions or attacks on other countries. I thought they wanted to avoid that kind of stuff, but apparently it depends on the political ideology of the government in charge of whatever country it is that you decide that you want to target, whether it's Nigeria, where you're using military force to make a statement on religious grounds, or whether it's Venezuela, where it's clearly about oil and socialism and opposing all of that. So we'll see. We'll see. Okay, what's going on in the chat here? CBDC Not says it's time for articles of impeachment against Trump. Good morning, Nude Monk. Says, well, Venezuela has been destroyed by Maduro and Chavez. U.S. oil refineries don't care much for the dark, cheap crude Venezuela has. Yeah, it's the same kind of oil, essentially, that Alberta has, too, which is not the easiest to get out of the ground and not the easiest to refine, although it's easier to get it out of the ground in Venezuela because of the climate there. It's warmer. I don't think it costs as much to get it out of the ground either in Venezuela as it does in Canada. So, coming up on 9 a.m. here now. So, as I say, news conference coming up in 2 hours at Mar-a-Lago with President Trump, who will outline exactly what's going on, well, from his perspective in Venezuela and what the fallout from all of this is going to be and what we're likely to see in the days ahead. We should get a lot more information this morning. I'm not sure if he'll take questions from media. He will be making a statement at 11 a.m. I think media will be there. So we'll probably have an opportunity to listen in as we grab that feed and see him questioned about some of what's happening. There's a chance, though, he may just walk up to the microphone, say what he's going to say, and that'll be that. We've got the feed established here. We should get that. I think we have the feed established. So we'll have that for you live coming up in 2 hours and 2 minutes out of Mar-a-Lago. And we'll find out more. So that's the state of things right now. U.S. invades Venezuela overnight. Attacks the capital city. They capture Maduro and his wife. They bring him back to the United States. Not back, but they bring him to the United States, where both of them will stand trial on weapons charges, narco-terrorism charges, and likely other charges. And now we wait to see what the U.S. will have to do on the ground in Venezuela and what will happen with the government of Venezuela and whether we have an election that will follow as a result of all of this or exactly where it's all going to go. Early stages of this developing situation, this developing story out of Venezuela. But we wanted to come on this morning, bring you up to date. Very consequential for Latin America, for the Americas. It gives us an indication of where U.S. foreign policy is at, national security policy, and the impact that this is having on other countries, including Canada. So we are going to sign off for the moment. We'll be back in 2 hours for the news conference live from Mar-a-Lago with President Trump. So until then, thank you for joining us here this morning on Maverick News. We'll see you back here, 11 a.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.